What a legendary song. I've always wanted to know, guys, what was Riders on the Storm about?
This is like a movie. Jim had a movie in mind.
Yeah.
He wanted to make a film about a hitchhiking killer, and this was originally to be the theme song for the movie about the hitchhiker. And unfortunately, unfortunately, we never got around to making the film because Jim passed on. So basically, that's it's a soundtrack.
I never take the lyrics real literally. I just get a mood from it. And actually, a friend of mine who's a Vietnam vet said that right when he got back to the States, Riders on the Storm sort of captures the mood he felt.
Ooh, that's heavy.
John Densmore, pinpoint a time in your career with the Doors that you consider to be the high point.
Easy. Walking out on stage in the dark to the center of Madison Square Garden and 24,000 people lighting matches and starting to scream, and we hadn't begun playing yet.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. For me, that was exactly the same thing. We were playing in the round, Madison Square Garden, New York City. And the announcer, we told the guy, don't announce us until we tune up. The three of us walk out to get tuned up. John's got to get the drums, and Robbie and I tune up. And as soon as we hit the stage, it's all dark. The announcer just blew it and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Doors." And the lights were off in the place. Fortunately, they didn't bring the lights on because we're tuning up. But what started to happen where, as John said, matches were lit, flash bulbs started going off, and I'm standing in the middle of this, and it's all around me, flash bulbs. I thought I was at the beginning of the universe. It was like the Big Bang had happened, or a star was novaing or something. It was one of the most incredible sights I'd ever seen. I thought, God, this is all for us? Wow, absolutely amazing.
Goosebumps and chills from top to bottom.
Ooh, I'll tell you.
Alrighty. Let's make some more classic calls here. We're dialing out. We're calling John in Denver, Colorado, who listens to Classic Call on KHIH.
I love this. We're just calling people around the country.
Hello?
Hi, is John there?
That's me.
John, this is Ray Manzarek from The Doors.
Oh, Ray, wow, this is a real honor you calling me.
Well, it's our pleasure, man.
And John Densmore is here, too.
Oh, wow.
Hi, John.
This is a dream come true.
I like your first name.
Well, thank you.
You got a question for us?
Yeah, I sure do. You might have been asked it a million times, but I want to know how you came up with the name calling yourselves The Doors.
Well, The Doors comes from a line by William Blake. The line is, if the doors of perception were cleansed, man would see things as they truly are, infinite. Then Aldous Huxley wrote a book about taking mescaline, and it was called The Doors of Perception. And Jim Morrison then reduced that even further to simply be the doors. It has to do with opening your mind up to the universe, seeing what life is all about. That's where the name The Doors comes from. So what else do you have?
Yeah, I was just wondering about what time you guys got together, about when you and Jim and everybody were together playing for the first time.
Well, the first time we played together was right off the beach in Santa Monica, California. And it was back in, I suppose somewhere around 1965, somewhere back in there. And we had just written a bunch of songs, and John brought his drums down, and Robbie got his guitar, and I played a piano, and Jim had a little amplifier that he sang through, and that was the very first time we played. We played Moonlight Drive, and we had a great time, man. And we knew we had something.
Oh, you felt the magic there.
Felt it. You got it, man. Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
Wow, so it was in Santa Monica on the beach?
Santa Monica, California, right on the beach. That's it.
How about that?
Well, thank you, John. Great questions. Boy, you never know what someone's going to ask. Another classic call here. We have time to call Cheryl. Cheryl listens to us on 97.3 KRQR, The Rocker, in San Francisco. Well, that'd be pretty familiar with your music there.
I hope so, up in San Francisco. God, that's almost like a home base.
That's it.
Boy, we played a lot of gigs in San Francisco, the Fillmore and the Avalon. Incredible.
Winterland is still there, although I heard they were going to tear it down and build condos.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Ray Manzarek from The Doors.
Hi, how do you do?
How are you?
I'm fine.
Great, me too. So I hear you got a question for us. That's why we're calling.
Okay. The one question that I had is, what do you attribute the resurgence of the Doors as a mega group 20 years after the fact?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's 20 years now. 20 years ago, actually, summer of 1967, Light My Fire was the #1 song in America, and here we are 20 years later, and it's a celebration of the summer of love all over again. And I guess the Doors just hit some kind of a timeless groove, something that tapped into the collective unconscious. There's a psychiatrist named Carl Jung. He was an associate of Sigmund Freud,
Right.
and Freud based everything on the sexual impulse, which I agree with, but Jung also said that man operates from a collective unconscious in which in our subconscious minds are these archetypes, societal archetypes, and I think the Doors approached that archetypal realm, that area of the unconscious, and I think it's the same today as it was 20 years ago, as it will be 20 years from now in the 21st century. We're going to be pretty soon in the 21st century, and I think the Doors and the Beatles and the Stones will be lasting musicians for the rest of time now. So
Yeah, I agree. And
Thank you.
Thanks for 20 years of great memories.
oh, thanks very much. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, same
okay,
here.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Some great questions kicking off our first show on Classic Call with the Doors. Next, we'll have some more music, some more classic calls, and an answer to that burning question, what was Jim Morrison really like? After this.
It's a tough question in that Morrison was a multifaceted, multi-personalitied kind of person. He was a great guy to hang out with. When the Doors first got started, we had nothing but just laughs and fun. He seemed dark to a lot of people. You think of him as that dark and mysterious Jim Morrison, but in actuality, he had a very biting wit, very clever, could always come up with just the right phrase to reduce some pompous fool just down to nothing. I mean, he was merciless in his reduction of some really pompous people that we ran into on the road. I mean, the things he said to some guys obviously can't be repeated on the radio, but he was incredible. He was very intelligent, went to UCLA, college graduate, very literary. He read a lot. He had been writing poetry since he was 6 years old, really a brilliant poet. And all in all, you wouldn't think of him as a fun guy, but from my recollection of Jim Morrison was he was an absolute fun person to be around with. Now, as the Doors' career progressed, the pressures of stardom started to get to him, and I think it's gotten to a lot of people. It destroyed Elvis, obviously destroyed Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and unfortunately it destroyed Morrison too. He started drinking, and I think ultimately it was the booze that really did him in. To get away from all the pressures of stardom, he found that alcohol relieved those pressures, and he drank himself to death. And I would not advise anybody out there emulating Jim Morrison's lifestyle. I would advise that you emulate Jim Morrison's mind, his soul, his spirit, his intelligence. That was the real Jim Morrison. The guy who died in Paris, unfortunately, was the body of Jim Morrison, but the spirit of Jim Morrison is always with us.
Was the poet in him dismayed to find that he was becoming a rock star instead of a poet?
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't so much that. It was the that he was becoming a rock star. He was happy to be a rock star. He enjoyed the hell out of that. But he wanted his poetry accepted. The audience wasn't coming to listen to his poetry. They were coming to see him do weird things and to freak out on stage, and that's what started to get to him. He wanted his poetry accepted. If you accepted him as a rock star, great. But in his mind and in my mind, he was a poet first and foremost.
I've heard that there's an interesting story behind how you first heard the lyrics to Moonlight Drive, one of my favorite songs, by the way.
Yeah. Moonlight Drive is the first song Jim ever sang to me on the beach.
Is that right?
When we graduated from UCLA, he was going to New York City, and I was going to stay in Los Angeles. I had just gotten out a couple of years before that, and said, well, too bad, man. I mean, we hung out together at school, and he was a lot of fun. And I said, well, if I'm ever in New York, I'll look you up. Month and a half later, I'm sitting out on the beach with nothing to do, and who comes walking down the beach but Jim Morrison? I said, hey, Jim, come on over here. I thought you were going to New York City. And he said, no, I decided to stay here. I've been writing some songs. I said, oh, really? That's interesting, because he knew I was a musician. We had never talked about a rock and roll band or anything. I said, writing some songs, huh? Now, I knew he was a poet, so why don't you sit down on the beach here and sing me a song? So he squats down in the sand, digs his hands into the sand, and it starts draining out from around his fingers. I'll never forget that image of the sand. and he started to sing in this sort of haunted kind of voice. Let's swim to the moon, let's climb through the tide, penetrate the evening that the city sleeps to hide. And I said, wow, that's incredible, man. That's rock and roll lyrics. And then he went on into the next verse, and I could hear all the things that I could do behind it. Chunk, 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 all the music and the chord changes and everything. And I thought those were just absolutely the best lyrics I'd ever heard for a rock and roll song.
Let's play that song right now.
Yeah.
Moonlight Drive, a classic Doors tune on classic